Back at it here on a Wednesday as we are streaming live the 2 Deep podcast, a football podcast. Thanks for joining us here. If you're catching us via the podcast later in the week, we do stream live 9 p on a Wednesday night, July 13th is when we got it going, 9 p Central here. So remember, if you are catching us on the stream, hit that like button, that love button, that subscribe button. Don't cost you nothing, but does a lot of good for us. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit that button. I'll remind you about that a little bit later on. With us, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Back from a little rest and relaxation.
Yeah.
A little vacation. We'll hear about that here momentarily. Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, where you can see his work. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can catch my work at 810WHB.com. A lot to get to today here in the program. We have at least one on the franchise tags that is not looking promising. That's Orlando Brown, the offensive tackle of the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs, a lot of negative reports out there as to whether or not that's going to happen. Is this the cost of doing business when you're a championship caliber team? Was this a bad deal to make a trade for Orlando Brown before the 21 NFL draft? We'll talk about all of that coming up here. Baker Mayfield's a Panther. What do we expect? Where's Jimmy Garoppolo going to land? Jeff Chadiha wrote at NFL.com not long ago, stop sweating the Lamar Jackson contract. Way too much is being made of it. Can we sweat it now? We find out. Let's get things started. First, though, with a report on the vacation, Jeff, how was it?
Oh, it was great. Although I always feel a little guilty that I'm on vacation because you guys actually work while you're on vacation. You being in Tahoe, or I guess that's a work play type thing, and
I was already working.
Eric being in Budapest. But I felt guilty right up to the point I was on a nice sunset cruise with my girlfriend in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Turks and Caicos, and I was thinking, well, they can get by for a week without me.
The rest of us feel like suckers for working during our vacation. So we all have a little bit of consternation there. I'm glad.
Yeah, it was good. I'm glad to be back and see you guys. My girlfriend's not happy to be home, but I got to pay the bills. So this is what we do.
That's how it works. That's how it all works. All right. Well, good to have you back. Glad it was safe travels and glad it was a good trip. Sounds like a good one. I always like the, is it sunset cruise or do you prefer the term booze cruise?
I do. The whole thing is a booze cruise of some sort, whether you're on the water or not. So it's just a matter of of semantics at that point. So it's just that was on the water, but everything else in between I gained a lot of weight in about 7-8 days.
Yeah.
Chadiha is now up to 7.8% body fat. To the distress of many.
You take out the decimal point, you have my percentage of body fat. So we'll forgive me if I don't shed a tear for your bulk you've added there, Jeff. Let's start with it because I think it's been one of the it's been reported on NFL Network, NFL.com about Orlando Brown and the contract not looking good. I think, we were discussing it this morning via text amongst each other. I don't think any of us are hearing anything differently. It does not look like they're going to come together on a deal. $16.7 million, the franchise tag for Orlando Brown, and the Kansas City Chiefs making a big splash before the 21 NFL draft and trading what was basically a low first-round draft pick to get Orlando Brown. I think the thinking was there's nobody in the draft that we like better. And to be clear, if we're to map this out, I don't know that there's anybody that went where they could have picked or later that has proven to be an everyday starting left tackle. However, having covered the Kansas City Chiefs and watched Orlando Brown down in, down out, I don't know that Orlando Brown is an everyday starting left tackle. I know, Jeff, you received some criticism. You too, like me, are based here in Kansas City and weren't just, blowing roses at everybody when it came to this move. Tell me, what do you think about where we sit now and what it means for what the Chiefs tried to accomplish and are still trying to accomplish with this deal?
I think Terry McCulley said it best. 9:06 p.m., Brown situation, no surprise. And this was coming, and not so much because of the player he is, but because of the circumstances surrounding him coming to the Chiefs. I mean, I think we all knew that they were desperate to stay in contention for a championship. He was the only available answer at the time, and it made sense that you wanted to find some way to keep the good times rolling. But this was always the scary proposition coming on the back end of this, which is that he was going to overvalue himself, that he wasn't just coming here to play with Patrick Mahomes or be a part of a championship organization. He was coming here to get paid. This is what going to left tackle was about in Baltimore. This is what being a left tackle going into his wanting to get out of Baltimore and coming here. And so there should be no surprise that he's playing hardball now, because this is what he's always wanted, to be a left tackle in this league and a highly paid left tackle in this league. So, I look at it like you dance with the devil that you came with, to mix metaphors here. But they were desperate to make a move. And when you make desperate moves, you get these kind of situations.
By the way, can we take a moment just to enjoy the mixed metaphor there?
Yeah.
You dance with the devil you came with. All right, that's how it works.
Yeah, I'm still on Tursten Keiko's time.
Yeah, forget about the girl who may have been across, the room, or the girl across the room. I don't know. I don't know how to untangle.
Yeah,
but I do like it. It makes the point very well.
Right.
Eric, what do you think about where the Kansas City Chiefs and Orlando Browns sit right now?
I think Jeff said it really well, and I think I want to expound upon something. He was the answer at the time. The question's different now, right? Like, the question back then is, we have Joe Thuney on a big deal. Not sure about center, right? Center's Austin Blythe and others. Right guard was Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, Kyle Long. Right tackles, Lucas Niang, Andrew Wiley, Mike Remmers, some combination, right? The question then was, how can we get 5 reasonable offensive linemen out of this when we only have 1, right? The question today is, Thuney at left guard, very good. Center and right guard were found out last year, very cheap, very good. Right tackle has a chance to be pretty good in Kennard, Wiley, Niang, one of those guys. And so the question is now, do they have to pay up for a left tackle, given that the 4 other spots are probably okay?
And let's not forget, Eric, I don't cut you off, coming out of the specter of a Super Bowl where their quarterback was running for his life.
Right. In a situation where the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, probably the best team in the NFL, whereas now this team is maybe 3rd or 4th best team in the NFL right now. If they're lucky, they have a hard schedule. There's not a ton of value in going all in this year. And again, we've been pretty on the ball about the Chiefs this year because we kind of read through things. When they lost to the Bengals 2 times in 6 weeks, I think they re-looked at themselves and said, we went all in on Chris Jones, right? We went all in on Pat. We went all in on Tyree, Kelsey got a nice deal, but we did all these things. We bent over backwards. We put Brant Tillis, the cap guy, through hell to try to get all this stuff to work so that you could lose to the Bengals twice in 6 weeks, right? Like, at some point they had to turn around and say, this is a different team. This is a different situation. These are a different set of questions we have to answer. And the Orlando Brown question just changed. And that's okay. Actually, I was talking to somebody today who somebody on the other side of that deal, the Ravens, and they had to calculate it out. If the Chiefs actually just let Orlando Brown walk and get a 3rd-round comp pick, that's the best outcome for the Chiefs in this trade, right? Because you traded what was the equivalent of like a 2nd-round pick for 2 pretty cheap years of Orlando Brown. That's not so bad, right? Versus if you trade all that stuff and then give Orlando Brown Trent Williams money, that's a negative EV play, right? And so I think I give the Chiefs a lot of credit for being pragmatic about this and not anchoring to the decisions that they've made 15 months ago.
I agree. And I think sunk costs have to, there's sunk costs. Throwing more money at it, trying to prop it up and change people's opinions or change what is the obvious outcome is the worst thing you can do. Right? Like we're going to give him 2 more years. We're going to give him 3 more years to try to get to where he is. I do agree with that. I think one thing that's interesting, I mean, I will go back and, I'll toot our horn a little bit as you tooted it a little bit about how we've been pretty right. People who've listened to this podcast are aware we've, talked about the Tyreek Hill trade. All of us spent all of last year saying, this is a reality, people, even with people saying, no, we spent this time saying, don't count on them getting a deal done when everybody says, well, the Chiefs have to sign him. I mean, they gave up a 1st-round pick, so you have to sign him. He holds all the cards. Not to throw our buddy Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star into the bus, but I mean, if it happens, it happens. Eagles. So, but I jousted with him on my radio show about it, and that was kind of like, hey, you can't make this move and not let him go. And I'm like, no, you can't make this move and then compound it by burying yourself in an even worse spot. And so I will give some credit if indeed they don't end up getting a deal, which there's still a possibility, although I think it's doubtful. I said today I put it at about 20%, and it'd be the surprise, I think, about face out of Orlando Brown that would bring a deal together, in my opinion. It's not the Chiefs throwing, okay, we got to have him, it's Trent Williams. I think when they made the Tyreek Hill move, the message that most agents should have taken from it, maybe not a guy who I don't know what he was doing, he clearly wasn't a football agent before Orlando Brown hired him, but most agents would have said, okay, these guys are different. This isn't the, keep it all together, run it back approach. We're right there on the doorstep, and we got to do whatever it takes to try to win one more championship. When they traded Tyreek Hill, they announced we're shifting gears. And I think all the noise coming from NFL Network, Jeff, a lot of the folks that you work with have been putting out the stories, are coming from an agent that, in my mind, and I'm curious if your guys' read is the same, are coming from an agent that is now feeling the heat. He's never been in this position, and when the deadline's weeks away, it's real easy to have a big pair of balls out there on the table and talk tough and hold your ground. But then when you get 72 hours away and you're not getting any return phone calls from the organization and your clients on you every hour on the hour, like, what do we got? What do we got? What do we got? All of a sudden you're looking around going, wait a minute, I got to make some noise here. I got to create. There does not seem to be the urgency that I thought was going to be there. First-time agents usually want to prove their value. How do they prove their worth? They want to set records. Look at me. I can step in and I can do this. And I'm wondering if you don't have an agent that's reeling and on the ropes and a client that's starting to get nervous. Don't get me wrong, $16.7 million is a pretty nice parachute, right? And he's got that. All he's got to do is put his name on a dotted line, and he's got $16.7 million. But it's not $40 million, $45 million, $50 million guaranteed. That would be there if you did a deal. Jeff, is your read similar to that?
Yeah, well, and the Chiefs also hold, let's not forget, they also hold that franchise tag next year too. So they've got a lot of control here over what happens to him. So he just can't do what the safety from the Jets did, Jamal Adams, and just bitch your way out of town. You have to actually figure out a way to scheme this to your advantage. And there aren't a lot of options for him. I mean, obviously there's talk about him not being at training camp, whatever, not being around for week one. End of the day, he's losing money. End of the day, like, the options dwindle if he can't get a deal done by July 15th. And I think, I don't even want to try and say it, something Artie by Darkley said it best. Like, here or outside here, you may talk about the Pro Bowl appearances, but at the end of the day, the performance was uneven enough to say, well, you shouldn't be the highest paid left tackle in the game. And to be honest with you, I think the bigger issue here is the Chiefs want to send that message to their locker room that they're paying that kind of money to guys who aren't at the top of the spectrum. They just let Tyreek Hill walk out the door, And so I do think that one of the biggest underrated dynamics in all of this is that Orlando Brown has only spent a little over a year in Kansas City. He's not somebody they drafted. He's not somebody who was here when they won championships. He hasn't been through all the things that Travis Kelce or Chris Jones, people like that. He hasn't seen those kinds of disappointing playoff losses. And so that makes it harder for him to really say, all right, I want to be a part of this because I'm so connected to all these people. Right. That's what I see on that end of it. And you're right. I think the element with the agent is you hire a guy who's got to make a big splash. He's not doing it. And now you're up against it. I just don't think it's not a winning formula for Orlando Brown.
Yeah, and I think you're overplaying your hand if you're Orlando Brown or Orlando Brown's agent and saying, oh, the Pro Bowls, the Kansas City fans are going to buy in. They watched him play left tackle with a team that dropped back and threw it all the time, and they watched him get beat pretty soundly early in the year. Yeah. And at other times, I mean, he's slow of foot. He's not Jonathan Ogden. He's definitely not Trent Williams. The fans in Kansas City are aware of that. So there's not a public sentiment of you have to sign this guy. Plus all the wackiness with not getting around to negotiating, not having an agent, did not play well towards creating a public sentiment that's going to put pressure on a Chiefs organization. By the way, a Chiefs organization that I don't think can feel pressure after winning a Super Bowl for the first time in 50 years, just a couple of years ago, and going back to it again, that's a miscalculation if they did. But Eric, we talked about this when you were a guest on my radio show. What is he really worth? What is, John asked, hey, what's the number that he's actually worth? And then what's he worth, let's say on the market?
Yeah, so in 2020, he was worth 1/3 of a win above replacement, and a win above replacement's worth in today's dollars like $50 million. So in 2020, he was worth $16.5 million, which is exactly what he's being paid on the tag, which is kind of like a cool thing for our metric. He goes to Kansas City. He's a little tougher. It's still easy to play left tackle for the Chiefs, but a little tougher than it is in Baltimore. He was worth about 0.27 last year, so that's about $13.5 million. Obviously, you bump up that because there are tackles that are on rookie deals, and so those guys are cost controlled versus guys that have sort of the ability to make as much as they want with respect to the tag. So, I mean, I would put the number somewhere around 17 or 18. I think all of us, everyone in this room, would be fine if the Chiefs paid him 17 or 18 on a reasonably length deal where they had flexibility to sort of move the money around and allow him. To your point, Soren, once you get him on a contract, you can move him to right tackle. You can move him to 17, 18 is like top of right tackle market money. And he wants left tackle money, but he's not that good of a left tackle. I mean, he's an okay left tackle. He's serviceable, but that's where I would put him. And I think the numbers sort of suggest that as well. Like at his very peak, he's a $17, $18 million guy. I think Jeff said the right thing. It's like, well, what kind of you pick and choose. You pick Orlando Brown over Tyreek Hill. Like you're paying Orlando Brown top of the market deal, and Tyreek Hill's produced 1,000-yard seasons, Super Bowls, all pros and all that kind of stuff, and you let him go, and for money that's very similar. I mean, Tyreek was going to get $25 million a year, more or less. So, what are you saying to your team? Like nothing matters, because then guys like Chris Jones are going to pull shenanigans. Guys like Kelsey, right now, Kelsey is saying, I'm taking less money because I want to win. And then you're going to pay a tackle who's not that good, top of the market deal. Is that really wanting to win? I think if they're all in on the same joke, then it's fine. If there's one guy who doesn't get the joke, then he's got to be made an example of.
Yeah. And I think, Jeff, how about this part of the equation? If, Tyreek Hill, I think we all believe, and I think we've all spoken with folks that have told us wasn't any chance Tyreek Hill was coming into camp without a contract. If the idea is, well, he still had a year. He knew the leverage time was now. He was not coming in. Chiefs got a great haul for him. And, are they better with him? Yes, we all agree with that. But they got their haul, and they've done what they can, and maybe they've built a receiving core that's better as a whole. We will find out. Orlando Brown, how much of whether or not the Chiefs did this right depends upon whether or not he plays, whether or not he sits part of camp, comes in fat and out of shape to camp, only gets a little bit of camp, misses regular season games. How much of the calculus, to steal an eager term, how much of the calculus depends upon whether or not Orlando Brown gets into camp in at least enough time to be ready to go for 17 football games this year?
You mean, will the Chiefs look bad will it blow up in their face if that doesn't happen?
Well, I think they'll look bad for sure. But because I'll give you a scenario. I'll just tell you, for me, I disagreed with the mindset. We talked about the run it back tour, and I was like, I don't know. I think you need some hungry guys. Yeah. I can't say I was right because they got all the way to the Super Bowl, and if their offensive line isn't banged up, maybe they go back to back. So I think it was a worthwhile play. I think they had that play, last year as well. And they got to the conference championship game, and we're leading at halftime and probably should have won the game, right? We're a heavy favorite to win it. So I don't think from Brett Veach's seat, he did anything wrong. You want to blame Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes for a crappy second half last year? I think it was just football injuries in 2020 as to why they couldn't beat the Bucs and a good Bucs team. But I don't think you can fault his plan of we're going to keep it all together. They put together 2 more really strong seasons, but now that's not the approach. Right. And now there's only so far you can go with that. They signed Chris Jones, which meant somebody had to go. And so I don't think it's bad if he sits. I think you have to take it kind of what you said, Jeff, where it was when this happened. You have to really make sure that you analyze this and grade it. Where were they when they did this deal? And what was the mindset? And now, as Eric said, it's changed. And now we look at it a different way. So I don't think you get to go back in a race and say, well, he did pretty good, went to a Pro Bowl, and they got to the conference championship game. Good deal. Oh, wait, he's going to hold out? No, now it's a bad deal. This is the risk you take when you make a deal for a player that you really don't know who he is. You think you do, you call around, but you don't know until he gets into your locker room.
Yeah. Well, I know what you're saying. The part of this is that I think the league in itself has changed thanks to what the Rams just did. That the rules have all been kind of torn up. You can do what you want to do if it gets you to where you want to be. And so it used to be the saying was, or the thinking was, you trade for a guy like this, you got to give him a big deal because you gave away the first round pick, and that's the only way you can really move forward. I think it's perfectly okay for the Chiefs to say, if he sits out, let's take the third. Let's take the third round pick in compensation and let's move on. Like, no one's gonna remember that first round pick. Let's find a left tackle that we like and that we can develop. They weren't in that place a year ago at this time. A year ago at this time, as Eric just said, they felt like we got to find somebody to protect our quarterback. And this whole left tackle thing that's a big part of this. Now I think they'd be a lot more comfortable saying we can draft a guy, we can sign a guy, we can trade for a guy, and get the same level of play that Orlando Brown just gave us. Maybe not in year one, but at least in year 2, year 3, we can go that route now. I think there's a lot more comfort level in doing that, and there should be, because they do have some good players up front. They do have a good offensive line coach. They have a phenomenal quarterback. They have a great head coach. And so they can get past the idea of we don't have to put all our eggs in the basket of Orlando Brown anymore. I don't think it's a disaster if he's not playing in week 1.
Well, and I think here's a question that Shane Vaughn just asked, which I think is a good one on the bottom here. Did the Chiefs think he could be an elite left tackle in Baltimore? No, he couldn't be. Or has his overall play changed their opinion? And this is where I hope the Chiefs want to be, but it's where the Ravens are. And the point is Orlando Brown had more utility to a team that was desperate for a NFL tackle than he did for the Ravens. Now, the Ravens struggled at the position last year, right? Stanley got hurt again. Alejandro Villanueva wasn't what they wanted him to be. Tyree Phillips, I think, like, he had his issues, and like the Ravens weren't exactly they got the better of the trade, I think, mathematically, but it's not like they were like laughing down the street. They went 8-9 and struggled with injuries. But the Chiefs didn't pay for an elite left tackle. They paid for a NFL left tackle, and they were desperate for one at the time, because if they go into the Tampa Bay Super Bowl with an NFL left tackle, they win that game probably. It's whatever. But that they weren't trading for an elite left tackle. They were trading for a left tackle who they knew could play right away. And then a bunch of bets that they made subsequently hit. And now they don't have to be desperate again. But this has got to be, I think, a mindset change for Chiefs fans, which is no one on that team has to be elite except for Patrick Mahomes. Everybody else is in support of that quarterback. And we have to understand that that's what the players are for. Who other than Brady? Like, name one defender. Well, you can, but there weren't that many elite defenders on the Patriots the last 10 years. Yep. Like Gilmore. Who rushed the passer at an elite level for the Patriots with Brady? Well,
Chandler Jones.
They traded Chandler Jones to the Arizona Cardinals.
They've had
those guys were all in support of Tom Brady.
Yes.
They're all in. Like, the Patriots, Gilmore was the one player that Revis, right? Like, 2 corners, which should be, you look at Brett Veach's process this year, and he's got 4 corners. Belichick went out and got an elite player twice during that time. Like that, and that, everybody is in support of Patrick Mahomes on that football team now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Even though Orlando Brown was seemingly the most supportive guy during the wedding season of Patrick.
As we found out with Zach Wilson, friends, they're tenuous.
Yeah, but guys, isn't also part of this that there has to be more trust within the Chiefs scouting department to say we can go out and find a guy to play this position and develop him? I was like, Andrew Whitworth was a 2nd-round pick. He played till he was 40 years old.
Is a 4th-round pick.
4th-round pick. Yeah, Donovan Smith was a starting left tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was a 2nd-round pick. You don't have to always have the most attractive left tackle on your arm.
I think, though, Jeff, like, prior to last year's draft, the Chiefs were kind of, they were in a slump, right? As far as drafting players and getting, like, I see where the Chiefs came from, right? And I didn't agree with the trade, but I do understand where they came from, which is we haven't drafted worth a damn in 3-4 years. The tackle class, like, here's the sort of betting market. Like last year, the first round, the market said there would be 6.5 tackles taken, and there were only 5, or 6.5 offensive linemen in the first round. Only 5 were taken, and one was a surprise in Alex Leatherwood. Like they did identify the draft properly as far as like in that area, there was going to be a relative like emptiness of tackles there. So, what I like about this situation they're in now is I don't see them being in this position ever again, which is we're over levered at a bunch of different positions, and we have to resort to using our draft capital, or we have to resort to using something else to fill a hole that we did not see coming. Right? This is a get out of that situation, and there might be some growing pains as a result, but I like the process in that they're getting out of having to be this desperate ever again.
A couple of things. One, I have to push back on Bakhtiari because the plan is not our 4th round left tackle, right? That's a fool's errand. So like when you do it, congratulations, kudos to the scouting and the Packers and everybody for finding that. But generally speaking, this is one of those spots on why this is the winner's tax. Right? When you need premium positions, they're hard to find at pick 29, 30, right? And we saw the Chiefs move up to get Trent McDuffie, a cornerback. They had him valued, obviously, as a guy that was still a first-round talent, and I think he was probably the last guy on the board, and so they moved up and got him, and I think you give credit, if it pans out and he ends up being a top-shelf corner, that they had the ammunition to make that move, because to get cover corners, to get big-time edges, we'll see if they got it right with Karlaftis on their draft. But to get quarterbacks, to get offensive tackles, and to get premium wideouts that don't carry a bust factor in them, you need top 15 picks. And so they found themselves without it. They did the best they could, but now they're not willing to compound the problem. And I'll say this, and I think it's unfair to John Dorsey to not get a chance to defend himself, but they paid Chris Jones under Brett Veach. Chris Jones was asking for, and let's see if there's an about face with Orlando Brown here, but he was asking for Aaron Donald money. He got DeForest Buckner money, almost identical. Brett Veach held his ground, and in the final week, the final days, in fact, later than this, they ultimately came together with a deal that looks almost identical to what DeForest Buckner got, and not the Aaron Donald that he was asking for. Go back to when John Dorsey, and again, I don't know that if it's Dorsey or Andy Reid wouldn't listen to him, but he will listen to Veach, or Reid has evolved and Veach and him are on the same page, or Clark Hunt's evolved and said, I'm not going to do it. But when Justin Houston came up and he wanted more than J.J. Watt off a 22-sack season, that was a great year, but nothing about it if you talk about the get-off and all the high-level stats that you see at Pro Football Focus. Nothing said, oh, this is Derek Thomas times, Kevin Green plus Bruce Smith. But yet, and it certainly didn't say he's better than J.J. Watt, but he got paid more than J.J. Watt. And I think that is an important difference to note here. Eric Berry had 2 picks and completely reset the safety. Well, actually, he kept it at his own number because it was so ridiculously high because of how the draft was. But they gave him an enormous contract under John Dorsey. And again, what I hear, it wasn't all John Dorsey. I think there was a lot of Andy Reid saying, we need all these guys. Get them signed. There's a different mindset now. You had a guy ask for Aaron Donald money. He got DeForest Buckner. Take it or leave it. And I think they might have walked on Chris Jones. And I expect the same thing from Orlando Brown. He wants Trent Williams money. He's either going to settle for Cam Robinson money, or he's going to play for the franchise tag and maybe moving down. And I think from an organizational standpoint, if you're a Chiefs fan, you like that. You like that they're now making the smart decisions.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And look, I go back to what I said earlier. It's when you're Chris Jones in that situation, it's a lot harder to say I'm walking away, because you're walking away from friendships. You're walking away from your neighborhood that you were living in. You're walking away from whatever your family is used to. There are other factors that play into this. You look at Juju Smith-Schuster, for example, 2 years ago when he was in free agency and he went back to Pittsburgh. People were like, why would he do that? Well, because he's got ties to there. Yeah. The thing that will always be the factor with Orlando Brown here is how much does he care about being on the Kansas City Chiefs, and what does he consider a win here? That's all it comes down to. Is a win here looking at your name in the headline with a big salary next to it? Or is it a win here saying I'm on a really good team with a great quarterback and a great situation for myself? I just don't think, as smart as he is, that's ever been a factor, because it wasn't a factor in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Well,
He was at least Baltimore had a good situation there.
Yeah.
So you look at how people talk sometimes, and it is revealing, right? Like I thought back, another Andy Reid reference, but you remember when Terrell Owens broke his ankle? He came back and had that big Super Bowl against the Patriots in Jacksonville, and the first thing he said in an interview was, "I told you I could do it."
Yep.
Right. It wasn't. I wish we would have won. I wish all this kind of stuff. Orlando Brown said, I wanted to prove to my dad I could play left tackle.
Yep.
Right. It wasn't. I wanted to prove to my dad I could win a championship.
Yep.
Right. And I think we have to be like, and look, far be it from me, right? Like we're none of all of us have sort of individual goals and all that kind of stuff, and like and you just have like the Chiefs just have to understand that, right? Like there are aspects of this. He's not asking for this much money because he believes he's going to help the Chiefs win a championship. I think anybody who believes that paying Orlando Brown $25 million APY it's going to lead to a Chiefs championship is insane. So like that's what I think we all think about, why isn't his relationship with Patrick Mahomes pushing this forward, right? Because Patrick Mahomes knows the exact same thing, right? And Patrick Mahomes wants to win Super Bowls.
And I'll go back to something that was said about Travis Kelce, taking a little bit less, but getting every year of the contract, making every dollar of it. And if Orlando Brown were to get $25 million and crush the cap and make it top heavy and get Patrick Mahomes killed because they can't sign whoever, and then suddenly he's cut for cap expenditures, he doesn't see that. Furthermore, if he gets his way out of town, and somebody will pay him $24 million because he's better than what they have, and they go to a team that doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, and 3 years into it, they're 3-13, and they go, we're blowing it all up. It's guys like Orlando Brown that get cut, and then have been exposed for multiple years that they're not a left tackle, and he's signing 1- and 2-year deals on teams that aren't good. And I think that's why you hire an agent that says, listen, I've been around this. I've had clients that I got the most money for, but that helped bust the team, and they were on to a new team every year for the last 4 years of their deal, for the last 4 years of their career, and never making the money they could have made if they'd have just taken a little less and stayed with a really good team. Because the Chiefs, if it works, are going to be picking 28, 29, 30 and never be in a position to draft your replacement.
Well, so let's ask you a question about this. Like,
you lock yourself into your job if you take a little less to stay here and are likely to get every year of the contract.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. Is Travis Kelce's career overrated because he played on so many great teams?
No. Oh, is it overrated?
No.
I mean, I'll answer it for you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And Travis Kelce gets that. Like, that's like, I think the point is like that dude's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to have like probably all the tight end records by the time we're all said and done. And, and look, I don't want to glorify players getting less than what they make. I want them to opt into that situation at worst. And of course, like I want, in the perfect world, there's no salary cap and they all get paid what their, what the free market deal is. But Kelce, like I asked that question kind of sheepishly because it's like, again, it doesn't matter, right? If Kelce puts up 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons because he took less and stayed with Patrick Mahomes on a team that's great, it's always going to be in prime time, and he catches the game-winning touchdown against the Bills in overtime, against the Chargers in overtime, and all those games in what was a down year for him, all of that is because of the choices he and the team, secondarily, and he allowed the team to make by being, a reasonable member of the roster from a salary standpoint.
Well, and I know we have other topics to get to. I just want to make this point too. I don't know, and I like Orlando a lot. I met him when he came out of college. I think he's a very bright guy. I don't know if he can handle the kind of scrutiny that comes with being what Frank Clark is right now, or what Alex Smith had to go through when he was a highly paid quarterback and he wasn't delivering. That's a whole different ball game. When you got that number attached to you and you're not playing at a high level and you have a team with these kind of expectations attached to you. I just don't know if he's built for that in the way that Frank Clark, one thing you can say about him, he's handled it like a pro. People have been complaining about him for the last 2 years and you've never seen him come out and snap and be surly about it. I give him credit for that. I just don't know if Orlando Brown is built in the same way where it wouldn't affect him emotionally, psychologically, in the way it doesn't affect Frank Clark.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, real quick. So what happens, Jeff? How does this play out now going into camp this year, next year? Big picture, Orlando Brown and the Chiefs. How's this ultimately end?
I think July 15th passes with no deal. I think he probably sits out training camp. I think he shows up and plays, maybe not a full season, but he'll play to get that money. And then next year, they'll probably try to find a way to move him or just let him walk. Either way, I don't see him playing beyond this coming year in Kansas City.
Eric?
Yeah, I think he sits week 1. I think they play Tooney week 1, and then he plays against the Chargers. He's a complete nightmare, and we're happy that they didn't give him the deal. I think he plays on the salary cap, on the franchise tag, and then they just let him walk, and they get a 3rd-round pick. And we look back and think, look, they gave up the equivalent of a 2nd-round pick, got 2 years of relatively inexpensive left tackle play, got a 3rd-round pick in return, and it was less egregious than we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think he plays on 2 tags.
Wow.
I think he plays on the tag. I think he sits out camp, all of it. Maybe misses a game because he comes in too late. He overestimates on the fact that they'll just throw him right back out there. But he gets his money this year. I don't think he plays well enough to get on the open market, for a trade to happen, for people to be lining up to come get him from the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't see the Chiefs being in position to acquire better. And maybe I'm wrong. But I think they put the tag on him a 2nd time and then he walks. And I think he ends up signing someplace to play left tackle on a bad team and has a couple of years there and then is cut when he's cuttable, because bad teams stay bad, generally speaking, in the NFL. Is there, and the last thing on this, and then we'll put it to bed, is there an option? Like Eric Fisher, for people in Kansas City, he is still a free agent. Is that a viable option in your mind, Jeff, if the Chiefs wanted to go down that road?
I think it depends on how bad it gets with Brown. I don't think it's the first choice here. He wasn't that great, and obviously he wasn't a good enough player in Indy where you have to go running to sign him. He was serviceable. But yeah, I certainly think it's a backup plan. No doubt about that. I don't think Joe Tooney is the 2nd best option if Orlando Brown's not playing left tackle for you. I think you want to get somebody who can play left tackle and has done it on a consistent level in the NFL.
Just to stay strong at the other positions, not putting yourself at 2 positions. I think we all agree he can play. We saw him play it against the Bengals. He played at a high level, so he can play. Do you want him there for 17 games? I agree. Eric, is Fisher that option that you put him in there and maybe he needs help all the time and allows everybody else to play where they are?
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that he's the best. Dwayne Brown just got in trouble. That's another one. He would probably have been too expensive anyway. Riley Reif, Nate Soldier. Soldier hasn't been good. And, Ty Nseki's another one that I think could be a possibility. Has been always a good backup tackle in the league. So, I think they're all options. And what do you think is the likelihood that they pull the tag altogether?
I think not very good.
Yeah.
Not very good. I can't see that because I think Andy Reid drove a lot of the sign Justin Houston, sign Perry, because he knew he had a team that the quarterback couldn't erase everything. He had a good quarterback, but he needed a really good team all around. And I think Andy Reid is now part of the process. I saw somebody in there say, well, John Dorsey wrecked the cap. No, they all did. Trust me, John Dorsey wasn't splashing around cash that Andy Reid didn't want him to spend.
Yeah.
They all wrecked the cap. But I think there's an understanding of what they have in Patrick Mahomes. And so, while I think they are willing to think big picture and move Tyreek Hill and do the things that they're doing, I do think that Andy Reid still has to coach this team this year. And if he can reach out and touch a guy who makes him better at left tackle, he's going to do it. He's not going to shove him out the door. So I don't think they pull the tag. I know it's a possibility. And if they did it, I wouldn't say they're morons by any stretch of the imagination. I'd understand completely why they're going to do it. Gives them a lot of flexibility and room to maybe make some maneuvering, but I'd be really surprised if they pulled the tag. Really surprised.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's turn our attention to Baker Mayfield. He's a Carolina Panther. Should there be any expectations for how this is going to work?
No. I think it's hard to imagine a quarterback, even though he's played 4 years in the NFL already, walking onto a team at this point in the offseason, learning an offense, beating out a quarterback who's already been there, even though the 3rd round pick Corrals is a rookie that he has a leg up. I just think if Baker Mayfield ends up playing for the Panthers or starting at quarterback, it would probably be around the midseason point. I think they would do everything possible to give Sam Darnold a chance to show what he can do. Mayfield's the better quarterback, obviously, but I just feel like when you put quarterbacks in these positions, Cam Newton's probably a really good example of that, signing late with the Patriots a couple of years ago and having a couple moments, but then really coming back to earth quickly and bottoming out. It's just, I don't know if that's good for Baker Mayfield, but ultimately this team is a disaster. It's the worst possible place he could have wound up if he's trying to redeem himself.
Agree, Eric?
I mean, the Panthers are like firmly ahead now of like the Bears, the Texans, and the Seahawks, aren't they? With Mayfield? Yeah.
If that means something.
It doesn't mean anything, but for example, they want a cookie. My thing is, so I had a big bet on Panthers under. I bought off of most of it because when I look at this team, and again, defense is what it is, but they have J.C. Horn, Dante Jackson, C.J. Henderson at corner. Shaq Thompson's a good linebacker. Brian Burns is a very good pass rusher. Derek Brown's a top 10 pick. Matt Ioannidis is a fine defensive end. Jeremy Chinn's a good safety. Xavier Woods is a good safety. Like, their defense doesn't suck that much. And the NFC's horrible, right? So like they could their defense is going to be good enough to like keep them around, on average. You look at the offense, DJ Moore is one of the best young receivers in all of football, right? So, Robbie Anderson has had his moments. Terrace Marshall was a highly regarded draft pick. Offensive line's terrible. Ike Ekwonu could really help that team. Like, this is not a team. This isn't the Bears. This isn't a Bears level of talent on this team, right? Like, they have talent. I think where Jeff is, and I agree with him, is that Matt Rule is a complete idiot, right? Like, so that's where I struggle here. But we've seen we've seen teams like that win 6 or 7 games. Like, this is where I get. And if they win 6 or 7 games, Mayfield could be okay, right? Like we saw encouraging things from Mayfield when the Browns won 7 games in 2018. So I don't know. In my personal opinion, was that he should have stayed in Cleveland and just like sucked it up and played there for a long time with a good support and like been the better person. And like I don't know. I don't think that this is going to get him a long-term starting job in the league. But if he would have gone to Seattle, it might have been worse, honestly.
Tell me, where in this start to the season are they clearly outgunned? Home for the Browns with no Deshaun Watson.
It's a pick'em. That game's a pick'em.
Okay. At the Giants.
That game's a pick'em. Actually, they're only one. I bet that game. They're 1.5 point underdogs. I bet them.
Okay.
It's the Browns to pick'em?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with no Deshaun Watson.
Jacoby Brissett.
Okay. Saints at home, week 3.
Yeah, Saints are better, but yeah, it's not that bad that much.
Not 9.5, not minus 9.5. I mean,
Jameis could throw 3 picks easily in that game.
Yeah, if you're like Carolina won that game, you're not like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Week 4, home for the Cardinals, a quarterback that there's been discontent. Who knows what the Cardinals?
Panthers defense is better than the Cardinals defense by a decent amount.
Yeah, the Cardinals are the better team, but you're still not like I fell out of my chair because they beat the Cardinals. Home for the Niners, Trey Lance at quarterback. I think it'll work with Kyle Shanahan. I like the roster better, but if Trey Lance is throwing the ball over, it's not until you get to at LA, home for the Bucs, that you're like, okay, they're probably losing those 2 games. I'm not predicting that this team is coming out 3-1 or something like that, but like for how bad it's going to be,
so
I don't think it's that bad. I'm with you. Have a left tackle to kind of protect the guy. Baker Mayfield's played pretty good football. I know it's unlikely that Christian McCaffrey plays 17 games, but if he plays the first 9 and gets them off to a good start, they added Deonta Foreman, who has come back from his own Achilles injury and looked really good down the stretch for the Titans. It gives them a 1-2 punch. I'm not as big on Chuba Hubbard, who's in that mix as well, but they're definitely deep at that running back spot if they're going to pound the rock. I think more of Carolina than maybe anybody else does in this room.
So you think Mayfield starts the season in those games? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think Sam
Darnold is horrific.
Okay, so you think it's not even? You think he comes out of the gate just?
I mean,
with the job. That'd be impressive.
And isn't
but we've seen this. This is Sam Bradford did this for Minnesota. And Sam Bradford is like kind of a similar quarterback to Baker, right?
Well,
Yeah, that was more like out of crisis, wasn't it?
But
this is a crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, having Sam Darnold as your only quarterback is a crisis.
Yeah.
Are we not giving enough credit to the fact that Baker Mayfield should have been sapped by the Browns? It never should have been on him, but he warriored up and played tough, and that guys will follow that. That he's got just about the reddest of red asses, and coaches and teams and players and locker rooms love to paint themselves as us against the world. Nobody thinks we can do it, and as much as he's, we're kind of like, settle down, Baker. If you're in the media, like. What are you getting all upset for? There are lots of guys in that locker room that are like, yeah, man, they're just out to screw us. You tell them, Baker. Like, I actually can see them circling the wagons around the guy.
Baker, like the Browns, the 32 games before Baker were 1-31. They were 30-30 in games that Baker played in. Like that, Baker is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. The issue is Matt Rule. I mean.
Yeah. The issue is, can he overcome bad coaching and a weak offensive line? We've seen him with bad coaching when they had Freddie Kitchens as a head coach, and he's had a pretty good offensive line for most of the time he's been in Cleveland, which is a huge issue for a quarterback who's small, right? And not especially mobile.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if they got it right at left tackle, that goes a long way towards making the rest of it work when it's all said and done. How about Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, where do we sit? Like, when is this thing going to get going?
There
are reports that say it's coming by the end of the month.
He can't stay with the Niners on his current deal because they have no flexibility if they keep him, right? So he's either got to be released or traded. And I don't, who's a team in the league that will trade for him? Seattle's not trading for him.
Right. No, I think it's release. I think the release is coming. That's what I think is going to happen. And then where does he land, Jeff?
This may sound like it may sound silly right now to say it, given what they've been doing the offseason. I think Miami has to take a good long look at making him putting him in the quarterback room. I just don't know you can sit there and say, Tua, we're convinced he's our guy. Their head coach knows Jimmy Garoppolo. He knows what he has in this team. You got a starting quarterback still on a rookie deal. That's the place that makes the most sense to me.
Have you not heard the Tyreek Hill podcast? Tua's more accurate than Patrick Mahomes.
Also, they have Bridgewater, don't they? Teddy's the guy that get them to 9 wins if they panic.
No.
I mean, doesn't he go to Cleveland?
Garoppolo?
I don't think so. I don't.
How do you do that?
If Watson's if he gets a year, I mean, that's a Jimmy G offense. That's let's put the guy in some privilege. Let's get some play action. Let's get some tight end over the middle, right? Like that's a Jimmy G, read off the teleprompter offense.
Nope. I mean, I don't think so. I think he's too smart to go there.
And they have the cap space. Like Cleveland has cap space this year.
Yeah, I don't think he goes for just the 1 year hit. Do you?
Yeah, I think he's going someplace to be the guy.
I got a better spot
for a while.
But he's not good enough. I'm sorry.
He took a team to the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game. How many other quarterbacks can say that right now?
So did David Woodley, and they didn't.
That was like 40 years ago.
Trent Dilfer.
Yeah,
I mean, there are guys that have gone and done it.
So we have to talk about cap space, right? So Browns have 48 million, Bears have 23 million, Cowboys an interesting one to back up to Dak, right? They have Cooper Rush there. Raiders 21, Panthers 20. Panthers still somehow have 21.
Keep going and see how long it takes you to get to mine.
Oh, are you saying Steelers?
Steelers.
With a first round pick sitting there?
Oh, no, he's cut. Yeah, with the first round pick, he plays the Alex Smith role.
What do you do with Trubisky?
What do you think they're going to do with Trubisky as it stands now? Do you really think Trubisky could be the guy?
First of all, the Steelers don't have a history of making those kinds of moves. They're like the most conservative team when it comes to making big time trades and big time.
That's because they had Ben Roethlisberger. But if you go back to Ben Roethlisberger, it was Neil O'Donnell and Mike Tomczak, and everybody is the same thing when you don't have your Hall of Fame quarterback. You're all the same thing. You're trying and pressing every button that's out there.
Okay. How about the Giants?
Yeah, I think the Giants are a good one. The
Falcons?
problem is no. You're telling me he's too smart to go to Cleveland, and he's going to go to the Falcons are a trash fire. The Falcons are the worst team in the league.
But not based on the ownership.
That league, he includes Houston. Falcons ownership is,
the Giants make sense. If you're ready to put on Daniel Jones,
offense requires their quarterback to play like that's not a hold your hand offense.
No,
Dable. Like Jimmy G needs like the privilege offense where like it's play action, it's tight end wide open, no one around him type offense.
All right, if he can go to the Giants, he can go to the Jets because it was ugly.
You're ready to put on Zach Wilson after 1 year?
I said if he can go to the – no, I never recognize it's sooner, but you could bring him in to stabilize the situation. But what about back to New England?
I don't hate that at all.
To be a backup? They've already got Mac Jones. They already got him there in New England. It's called Mac Jones.
Are you sold on Mac Jones?
I think Mac Jones is the younger version of Jimmy Garoppolo. Younger, cheaper version of Jimmy Garoppolo.
And listen, I was the guy who kind of stuck up for Mac Jones and was a hater of Justin Fields, and not labeled as a hater. I'm not a hater, but I don't see it as much in Justin Fields. I like Mac Jones at Alabama. I gave him a Heisman Trophy vote, and I think he's better than people gave him credit for. But I think he was way underrated, and I think now he's getting way overrated. Oh, he's a Pro Bowler. He's 22 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. He's a rookie. It's a good start, chance to get better. There's also guys we've seen play well early, kind of take the league by storm, and they're like, okay, this is what he does. Now let's blow this guy up.
Yeah. He's not.
But what's ironic about Jimmy is that literally there's probably 4 places he could have been if things hadn't fallen the way. He could have been in Tampa easily, could have been in Pittsburgh easily, could have been in Cleveland before they started dancing with Deshaun Watson.
Indianapolis.
Indy. Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
And so
he wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, the Falcons are not a healthy franchise. That's why Indy's not an available place either. Because they tried to give Deshaun Watson the keys to the city and got sideways with Matt Ryan, the best player in the franchise's history. But
could have been in New Orleans even.
Yeah. New Orleans is another good one, right? Like that's a good defense, a quarterback in Jameis, who I'm big on, but obviously that could go belly up just as much. He could be like last year, if during the Trevor Siemian starts, they just had a quarterback who could get the ball on the green, they would have made the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So
and Washington too, I guess. So that's 17 we easily named he could have been playing for by now. I just don't see where the natural fit is.
Well, if the head coach in Arizona has the ownership's back, you could trade. You could put Kyler Murray up for a boatload and bring Jimmy Garoppolo in. If Kyler Murray's going to leave at some point anyway, I'm just telling you, I think there are more landing spots for him than people act like. Well, where could he possibly go? Like we just rattled off all these different places that like are not, like, well, they took Zach Wilson. Like, well, if we talk about it all the time. If you looked at him and went, it's not there. Are you going to go 2 more years of watching him stink before you start trying to upgrade the spot?
Well, especially because you're tied to him as a head coach, like Salah. Zach Wilson's got 1 more year, right? Or Robert Salah and Douglas and those guys they're looking after themselves.
Yeah. Well, and then the Niners aren't letting Jimmy G walk away. They're trading him. There's no way you're letting a quarterback who's got his resume out the door without getting some kind of compensation for that.
How about this from Aaron? Baker or Garoppolo? Who would you rather have?
Oh, Garoppolo.
I'm assuming the question's coming with them both being healthy, which is
I would prefer Baker Mayfield, actually.
I think
Baker's got a good arm.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo, if you're loaded everywhere, is the better choice. If you think you're going to need a quarterback to pull one out every now and then, I think Baker Mayfield would be the answer.
Baker has way more potential, right?
I like Garoppolo because he's been around the right kind of franchises and he understands who he is and what he has to offer. It's an Alex Smith type trait, but it's an underrated trait for quarterbacks in the NFL. Know who you are and what you can do.
That's to me, you just running with the other good looking guys.
You and George Chahuri would make the same choice.
Yeah,
it's a bias you guys have towards men that look like you.
Guys like Eric and I, just plain Jane normal folks. We do it on football skills.
Yeah. You like guys who live in stadiums. That's what you like.
Yeah, exactly. Not on guys who look best in the suit.
Yeah.
All right, listen. You had the piece. I think it was 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. I can't remember what it was, and we talked about it at that time about stop sweating Lamar Jackson's contract. Well, they're knocking on the door. They're a week away from training camp.
Yeah.
Is it time to be sweating that contract at this point?
Well, I thought I saw a report. Didn't somebody say that they feel good about it getting done before training camp? If that was on our air or somebody. I thought somebody said it on TV when I was on vacation, when I was like sipping my mojito and my 8th mojito and trying to figure out where I was going to go eat sushi for the night. But look, I don't, again, I think the factors that are affecting this have less to do with Lamar Jackson being upset about something or the Ravens being sheepish about what he can do, and more with the quarterback market, specifically Deshaun Watson's contract, his style of play, and the fact that he's his own agent or that his mom's his agent. Whoever it is, it's not like a real agent helping him out. I just think that and I think those are more influential on this taking the amount of time it's taken than it is anything about what the Ravens think of him or what he wants overall.
Is that the moral of the story tonight? Because we started with Orlando Brown and his, goof fest that went on with his agent. We're finishing with Lamar Jackson and what's going on there. Is the moral of the story, okay, if Patrick Mahomes wanted his dad to be his agent or he wanted to be his own agent, you deal with it. Tom Brady, you deal with it. I don't think it's coincidental that either one of those guys are their own agent. I think it speaks to it. But if that's a road you're going down, that's a problem. And let me say, see the last point. Like, if that's going to be an issue and if there is friction there and if you can't get it done, are we wrong to not talk about, hey, a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo going to Baltimore and Baltimore trying to do it more traditionally?
Oh, I can't see that happen. I can't see them having a traditional.
Jimmy Garoppolo's gone to a Super Bowl. You said it yourself, Jeff. I mean, Lamar Jackson can't win.
That team cannot support a Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And I know Jeff Jeff likes Jimmy G, but that set of receivers would make the 2014 Chiefs would make that set of receivers blush. Like, they're bad. And I know Jimmy G likes throwing to the tight end. I don't know if he likes throwing to 7 tight ends at once.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah, it's like Patrick Ewing playing for the Warriors. Like, it just wouldn't fit right.
Okay. So is it time to sweat the fact that if you're a Ravens fan, that they haven't got that deal done?
I don't think it is. I mean, I just think Lamar's a different kind of a guy. I don't think he's as uptight about this. I think he's made some subtle references about it by putting the grill up on his social media posts. I need money and some of this stuff. But I think the biggest factor when you don't have a real agent representing you is you miss those opportunities throughout the offseason to have these kind of conversations and help move the ball forward, whether that's at the owners' meetings or at the combine, or agents have other players who are dealing with the team that you want to talk about. So you have a chance, at workouts. There's all these opportunities where you can have these informal conversations to help kind of create some goodwill and help move the ball forward, that if you are representing yourself, you don't have those things. And so they've got a couple more weeks before training camp starts in Baltimore. I would suspect you'll start hearing more positive news, and this deal will be done before training camp ends. I don't see him holding out. I'm going to be at their training camp at some point in early August. I haven't heard anybody say he's not, or he's upset about something. It's just not a factor. So I think it's going to get done, and I think he'll get a lot of money, and I think we'll move forward.
Do you like Lamar Jackson versus Bernard Pollard on Twitter?
What is that about? I don't know that. I didn't see that.
Bernard Pollard pretty much just said he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's a top 10 talent, but not a top 10 quarterback.
Oh, did he? Okay.
And Lamar Jackson fired out to the extent, Pollard said, no top wide receiver will ever come while LJ is there. Plenty of wide receivers have been available to get in the offseason while LJ has been starting, but nobody wants to go.
Sammy Watkins erasure, by the way. Jeez.
That's right. They give him respect, but they don't want to play with him. LJ is good, but he's not able to make the throws. Lamar Jackson fires back. You've been capping since I've been playing for the Ravens. I never heard of you, to be honest, my boy, and you got your Super Bowl because of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed that year.
It's such a BS argument, the whole thing about top tier receivers playing in this offense. It's not built for top tier receivers.
There's also this, like, maybe racist is the right, like, but like calling him a top 10 talent but not a top 10 quarterback is a stupid thing, right? It's dumb to say. Like, I don't know. Like, people have to be able to intelligently talk about Lamar Jackson without showing their ass all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, and calling him a top 10 talent but not a top, either he's, and either he's a good quarterback or he's not. Stop like patronizing him with like, oh, he's a good, like that. I don't know. And I know QB wins.
He's not a top 10 quarterback, and I wouldn't give him the money. I think
but you're not saying to him, you're not saying, well, but he's got top, you're just saying, look, his production is not some, like, say that then and back it up like you are, or just say like, look, like, and there are other things that we can't measure. Like I took the tracking data and I found that teams just don't bite on play action against the Ravens. When Joe Flacco was in there, they bit on play action against the Ravens. Why do you think that is? Because they're scared as shit of Lamar Jackson breaking down the outside of the play. Like those aren't reflected in traditional statistics. Like when we see a quarterback who wins at the clip that Lamar Jackson wins at, but doesn't always have the stats that we see from traditional quarterbacks that win, our goal is maybe less to dismiss that quarterback and more to find out why, right? Yeah. It's the same reason, again, you guys make fun of me for this. It's why I look at a guy like Kirk Cousins who puts up great stats and doesn't win. It's also why I look at why that doesn't happen, right? Well, but it's a call to learn more things.
But that's my point. Why is it okay to be open season on Kirk Cousins on that? But if you do it with Lamar Jackson,
because Lamar wins. But Lamar wins.
Not playoff games.
Well, sure, but Kirk Cousins doesn't even take his team to the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? I'm old enough to remember when Peyton Manning wasn't winning playoff games at the clip that we thought he should. And it was a big deal. And this guy is probably, certainly a Hall of Fame, top 3 or 4 quarterback in the history of the NFL. I can remember when Matt Ryan was a quarterback who couldn't win in the playoffs. And the problem I have with Lamar Jackson is it's low-hanging fruit to say it's the way he plays that affects his ability to succeed in the postseason. I get that he has to do it, but it's just, to me, it's always, he just can't throw the football. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, it's not the way he plays. It's the fact that he's just not the accomplished passer yet. Right. And I think also, everyone's like, well, you got to just embrace what he does and stop trying to make him a drop back quarterback, except for like, that's what wins in the NFL.
Right. But right. I think it's okay to say right now, Lamar Jackson is a quarterback that you can win a lot of football games with various roster compositions. His first 2 years in Baltimore, they spent 66% of their cap his first 2 years as a starter on defense. Right. So that helps in the sense that, like, I believe his in 2019, they had like an egregiously low number of plays when they were trailing. Right. So obviously that helps a guy who, people have questions about his accuracy and stuff. Right. But also that the fact that defense is taking 2/3 of the cap means that his offense is taking 1/3 of the cap and he's still being productive offensively. And they were blowtorching those teams. Now, he had to come back from double digits against Tennessee in the playoffs on the road. And we saw him do that. And he did it both with the run and the pass. Last season, he's like, I also think you got to take a step back and think, how much of the last 2 years was Lamar Jackson plagued by COVID? Because he had COVID like 17 times. So I think
he had half a roster last year. What was COVID?
But he himself had COVID, right? Like he had COVID himself a number of times. And like we've seen, like, I bet WNBA games based significantly on who's had COVID. Like it matters even for these people, these elite athletes.
Let me ask you this.
You could have Lamar outside the top 10. I had Lamar at 9 last year, and I have a ton of respect for him. This league has a lot of great quarterbacks. I think the point has to be, Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback, and there might be 10 guys better than him, right? Like, if you came to me and said Dak was better, Kyler, I can't do Kyler, but Dak is better, I'd be okay with that. If you told me Herbert was better, I'd be okay with that. If you told me, Burrow was better, I'd be okay with that. But like, that's the argument, is that there's so many great quarterbacks here. Not that Lamar stinks or there's some like, but a lot of people think that about Lamar.
But you're also now headed out of everything he's accomplished on the cheap contract, which we have talked about, that Mahomes has got to now do it while he's expensive, right? Russell Wilson has never done it while he's been expensive, right? That's the trick. Aaron Rodgers has never done it while he's expensive. That's the real trick. And this is the decision you have to make if you're the Ravens. And here are the returns. 2018, 6 touchdowns, 3 INTs. 19, 36 and 6. 20, 26 and 9. 21, 16 and 13. COVID, okay, definitely a variable out there that has to be considered. Yeah. 6, 36, 26, 16, going the wrong direction. 3, 6, 9, 13, going the wrong direction on interceptions. I mean, I like, if they sign him now and he comes out and the trend continues and he throws 13 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, they're the dumbest bunch of fools that ever lived, because there's 3 years of trend that say you should not be slapping around a monster deal on this guy.
Yeah, you think he's going to be a worse quarterback this year?
He's been worse every year for 3 years.
He's been worse every 3 years? What are you talking about? You just listed he went up from his rookie year to MVP season.
But the last 3, in 19, 36 touchdowns, 6 INTs, a passer rating of 113, a QBR of 83. 2020, 26 touchdowns, 9 INTs. So down from 36 to 26. INTs went from 6 to 9. Passer rating went from 113 to 99. QBR went from 83 to 67. Okay. Now let's go to 21. Went from 26 down to 16. He's dropped 20 touchdowns. Granted, he only played in 12 games.
Was hurt. And his whole offense was hurt.
Okay. And I get it. But 9 interceptions became 13 last year. Okay, let's take it out. It's not making counting stats. Passer rating went from 99 to 87. QBR went from 67 to 51. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
That team was still in playoff contention, right? At the end of the year with half their roster, which is a big stat too.
I love John Harbaugh. I love the Ravens. I love what they've done with Lamar Jackson. And maybe if you want to accuse me of being of rooting for my prediction, when they drafted him, I said, I love it. You run him to death for 5 years. If he's still healthy, slap a franchise tag on him, do it another one, slap another one on him after that, and then get the hell out. Because guys who run that much get beat to hell. That's when it's all – that's where it goes.
I think that the thought process on the Ravens side, right, has to be, look, if he's worth it, the difference between 45 and 55 million is nothing. Right.
But is that saying
I don't think they know. Like, I believe, and again, like, this is my take on Lamar. Lamar's probably somewhere between the 7th and the 12th best quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think that paying the 9th best quarterback in the NFL $50 million is a cost-effective move.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. Is he, when it's all said and done, his career is over, does he look more like Cordell Stewart or more like Steve Young?
Oh, Cordell Stewart he's got an MVP. He won an MVP.
When it's all said and done, is he going to?
I think it's more like Cam Newton. I think it's
Mike Vick or Steve Young.
Well, Mike Vick had a pretty good run too.
Yeah, the Panthers made one playoff appearance after Cam Newton signed his veteran deal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think
it's hard. It's like. And I think the Ravens are a cutthroat. I mean, Eric DeCosta, ED, every dollar counts. Like, that is their thing. And like, I think it's unfortunate that Lamar Jackson, who I think separates a lot of NFL fans into two camps, I think it's unfortunate that he went to a team that is very nitty about the dollars they spend, because almost any other franchise is like, dude, he's an MVP. Let's give him the money. And I think he probably has earned that. But like, the Ravens are looking at, I mean, you just say Cam Newton. Cam Newton's one of the best players of last decade. Made one playoff appearance after he got, the Super Bowl when he was on the rookie deal. Like, it's just hard to win in the NFL. Like you said, Rodgers, no Super Bowl since veteran deal. Mahomes, since he's, they didn't make the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs had to change their entire approach to roster building this offseason because of it. Like, I just think it's a weird situation, and the Ravens are the one team that's actually willing to like approach these problems and question them. And what I think it makes it confirms the priors of people who are I think, and I don't put anybody here in this camp, but like there are people who don't think Lamar, like who are kind of on the whole other spectrum on Lamar, and it confirms their priors, which I get angry about. And it puts people like, like Soren and me who are kind of looking at this and saying, well, I'd like to weigh both sides. It kind of puts us in a weird position too, because that means we're doubting a quarterback who's been very good, to your point, Jeff, in the first,
how about this? How many people were sitting there saying Cam Newton was going to have the year he had when the Panthers went 15-1 and lost the Broncos in the Super Bowl? Nobody was predicting that kind of year. But he had that kind of talent to him.
Yep.
And what I'm saying, if you're the Ravens, you're sitting there saying, the flip side of it is, if you're paying him a lot of money, you don't have to go sign big name receivers and pay them $25 million a year to be part of your offense. You don't have to have top tier talent throughout your whole offensive line because he's making your offensive line better. The bulk of your money can be spent on defensive players because you're managing your budget in a way that's completely different than what the Chiefs have to do, or the Buccaneers, or the Packers. You have to find a way to put things around your quarterback. In Baltimore, you got to keep your quarterback upright, healthy, and with the same offensive coordinator he's had for the last 4 years.
So let me ask you this. All right, you mentioned Cam Newton and the year he had. Who knew he had that kind of talent, right? That was your point there, right? Well, so he won the MVP that year, right?
Yeah.
15-1, went to the Super Bowl. How many other years did he finish in the? I don't know. I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. I don't know how far down they rank, but how many other times in his career has he been thought of as a contender for the MVP?
I think that was it, wasn't it? Yeah.
0. That's 2018 he was good, but yeah.
Right. So I would say that 15 was a perfect storm of an organization that everything came together around him and benefited him. Lamar Jackson, hasn't that year already happened? Like you said, probably the closest comp is Cam Newton. He's already had that year. It was in year 2. Based upon Cam Newton's track record, it says to us, and what he just said, one playoff appearance after he signed the contract. Why would you every piece of evidence that's been laid out here is that there will never be another year like his big year. So why would you pay for something that you know is not going to come around?
All right, let me ask you this. Patrick Mahomes, what did he do last year, statistically?
36 and there was a time
13.
when I was sharp enough that I would remember all this. 36 and 13 with 4,800 yards.
Okay, that's his worst year professionally, right?
37 and 13, by the way. Yes.
Okay, so do you think he will ever have a year that comes close to what he did in his first 2 years as a starter? Yeah, this year.
And to your point, his QBR, 80, 78, 78, 62 last year.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm backing you up. I'm giving the numbers because I'm not trying to just bury, numbers. I'm giving a full picture of what the guy has been. Yes, I do. Because he threw for 5,000 yards. He's thrown for 4,700 yards. He's thrown for 4,800 yards.
That's because you like the way he plays, right? That you prefer that playing style.
He's got 3 seasons of more than 37 touchdowns.
Yeah.
3.
And Lamar Jackson has how many combined touchdowns? I think Lamar Jackson has scored more touchdowns, been responsible for more touchdowns than Mahomes has in the last 3 years, right?
No chance.
Rushing and passing?
Not after last year.
Well, not after last. Well, then the 2 years when we helped.
Hang on.
I would assume it's probably he's had 40 some touchdowns, and probably I think he had 50 when he won the MVP.
Hang on, I'm adding it up. 78 plus another. Are we going the last 4 years?
Well, just for the 2 years when he was healthy, he played full 2 complete seasons. So 19 and 20.
You went 19 and 20, 14 rushing. So you're going to cherry pick his best years, but okay. 76 total touchdowns in 19 and 20. Do I cherry pick the 2 best years for Mahomes?
You said he only had 20. You said he had 26 passing touchdowns In 19, right? I mean, 20, right?
Why are we cherry picking the 2 years that fit best? If you're going to take Lamar Jackson's 2 best years, let's take Mahomes' 2 best years.
Well, let's do total games. Let's do total games then. Do it that way.
Okay, 151 passing touchdowns for Mahomes in 63 games. Mahomes, we have to throw in his rushing touchdowns as well, which are not nearly as prolific, but he's got some. Where's his rushing? He is rushed for another 8 touchdowns. Okay. So we're looking at
159.
We're looking at a total of 159. In
over how many games?
63 games. 63 games.
Okay.
Lamar Jackson in 58 games, 5 less, has thrown for 84 and run for 21.
Okay, so he's at 105. Okay.
He's crushed.
Okay.
By Mahomes.
Mahomes.
Now, if we were to compare those 2 seasons, I think the numbers are higher.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar was MVP.
Compare 19 and 20. Yeah.
Okay. 19 and 20.
His MVP season and his next best year.
19 and 20. All right. He threw for 62 touchdowns passing for Lamar in 30 games. He ran for 14 more, so 76. Okay, Mahomes 19 and 20, which we're grabbing. I have 14-game year for him and a 15-game year. He threw for 64.
Hold on a second. So he threw for 64. How many rushing touchdowns? He had in 2020?
And he ran for 4 more in 19 and 20. So 68 touchdowns for Mahomes. What did I say for Jackson?
I think it was like 78.
No.
Is that what it was? I know he had 50 touchdowns combined in 19.
It's 60 plus 14. He had 74.
Okay. That's the point I'm making. When he's healthy, he's scoring a lot of touchdowns. There's more than one way to get in the end zone than just throwing the ball in the end zone.
When he's healthy and cheap, he's been at his best.
So you think when he's expensive, he's not going to be able to run the ball in the end zone and score touchdowns?
Yes, I think he'll be broken down.
Oh my God. I think Lamar Jackson, I think we had this conversation before that they've probably missed the same amount of games as Mahomes has in his career, right? What is it?
Lamar Jackson has played 58 games in 4 years. Mahomes has been a starter for 4 years. Is that right? Yeah, 4 years. He's played 63.
No. So 5-4, whatever it is.
Yeah. And he got 1 more the year before Lamar was in the league. So, yeah. So there it is. Enough said. Eric, anything to sum up?
No. The Lamar thing, I might just tweet this out and be like, everybody's wrong about Lamar. The same way everybody's wrong about Jalen Hurts. The same way everybody's wrong about Carson Wentz. Everybody's wrong about Cam Newton. I just feel like some of these quarterbacks are polarizing when it's cool to be I think the Ravens are doing the right thing and doing their due diligence, especially if the dude doesn't have an agent. And I think, Jeff, you could probably back me up on this. The fact that he doesn't have an agent is one of the reasons why he wasn't in that silly top 10 from NFL executives, because he doesn't have his guy pounding the table for him all the time. The guy's on his own, and then he's subject to all the biases and stuff like that we can control for if there's more voices in the room. But he doesn't have that advocacy for him.
I think Lamar Jackson is the same. I see him in the same vein as I see Steph Curry in the NBA, where he has to play a different style to succeed, and over time, that style will become the way football is played in the NFL. I just think people are used to traditional drop back quarterbacks, and the way, as Bucky Brooks, my coworker at NFL Network, said profoundly, we've gone from having shooters as quarterbacks to having scorers. And so if you like the idea of just, hey, the old school, the Tom Brady's, that's great, the Peyton Manning type guy, but I think you're seeing more and more of, I think Lamar Jackson is the extreme version of what Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers are. It's just, if you like it, that's great. If not, I understand why you don't like it.
Yeah, Listen, I love the feat. I love the ability to escape and make something out of nothing. But I think you've got to be able to do things within the framework as well, and just drop back and spin it sometimes to save yourself is where that's my objection to the way Lamar Jackson plays. Love watching him play.
Let me ask you this.
Let
me ask you this, and I said this on Baltimore radio. If Colin Kaepernick hits Michael Crabtree for the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Ravens in 2012, are we having a different conversation about Lamar Jackson right now?
Because Colin Kaepernick would hold his job and still be the.
I'm just saying there'd be proof of that kind of quarterback winning a championship that wouldn't put so much of a burden on Lamar Jackson to have to do it to make people think it could happen.
Well, I think it can happen. I don't. Again, my fault is not that the Ravens are going down this road with Lamar Jackson. My statement is not that he sucks. My statement is investing. I love him on his rookie contract. It was a brilliant move to draft him and play him. Those days are about to end. That's why, like, to your point, don't sweat the contract. I think you have to sweat the contract because they signed Joe Flacco and it was the worst move they made.
Yeah, but Joe Flacco is not as good of a quarterback as Lamar Jackson is. That's been proven out.
How many road games? Joe Flacco won a road playoff game every
year.
Joe
Flacco's won the most road playoff games in NFL history, tied with Tom Brady.
And who's talking about him as being?
No, I know, but I think
the
hard part.
Yeah,
I want to bring this back. So there's been two quarterbacks in league history that have rushed for 1,000 yards in a season. Michael Vick, when he did it, over 70% of his rushing yards came on scrambles.
Yeah.
When Lamar Jackson rushed for 1,200 yards in 2019, over 2/3 of those yards came on designed run plays. Like, we have, even if you compare like Michael Vick, who in my opinion, like one of the premier quarterbacks of this era and one of the more unique talents of all time, Lamar Jackson is distinct from him.
Yes.
Like, our models at PF, like, this is, again, like, what I love about Lamar Jackson, he makes us do research because they win with that. And yet there's holes in our understanding of how they do it. That's where I get a little concerned because I think we come back, we talk about Kaepernick, we talk about Mike Vick, and we talk about all this stuff. Like, I don't even think Lamar's like close to either one of those guys. Like, he's a very singular figure, which I think is what is caused this entire hang up with all of us in terms of trying to understand his value and can he overcome the rough things, that are going to come because that team, that roster is atrophied a little bit and he's going to be paid more money, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's a complicated problem. It's not easy.
Listen, if you floor a 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder car, you can keep up with a V8 for a long time. Right, but the V8 doesn't have to floor it to really go.
Yeah,
and that to me is what a passing quarterback is. Yeah. You don't have to floor it all the time, and Lamar Jackson is a car that is floored all the time the way they play it.
That's what Mike.
But what if you get into a year like last year where the team with the optimal team didn't win? Bills didn't win, Chiefs didn't win, Bucks didn't win, Packers didn't win. Like, the Ravens could still keep themselves in that conversation. Like, I agree that they're not the optimal team with Lamar Jackson, but if they're always in the mix because of great coaching, great front office, and a good to great quarterback who does it a little differently, and the Chiefs falter or the Bills falter, like, you're telling me Lamar can't string 4 playoff games together? I think he can. That's kind of where I am. I think the same thing about Stafford. I think the same thing about Dak.
I think
they're at a disadvantage against the Chiefs. Yes, I agree.
I think he can. The question, and I will say it. My opinion is it's a fool's errand to plan for that.
Yeah,
that's my only point. Like, can you? Yes, Trent Dilfer can win a Super Bowl, but the Baltimore Ravens' plan wasn't plan A. Trent Dilfer, get him, make him the guy,
Tony Banks,
lock and load, build around
Tony Banks.
Right? Like, they ended up there. And they made it work because of a great defense. And, he's better than that. He's significantly better than Trent Dilfer. I think he's better than Brad Johnson. Yes, you can win with him. But how many times is he going to be healthy at the end of the year? That's the question. All right. Long enough. Let's get out of here. Great to have you back, Jeff. We missed you last week. We'll be back at it next week. Thank you for joining us here on the 2D Podcast.